Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to our first Self-Defense Fitness Live question and answers. If you're just joining us, or if you are here waiting, I want to first of all give you thanks for your patience. We're overcoming some technical difficulties, but it seems as if we have finally overcome that issue. So here we are today now with our first episode, Excitement Buzzing. And for today's episode, the focus is on the 4Ds of self-defense. Now, if you are here, you more than likely have an interest in self-defense. Maybe it stems from your reality, which is living in a world that can be dangerous. You more than likely would have had some experience, whether it would have been to your benefit or to your detriment. But even so, the whole context and the reality of being in a better position to better protect yourself, your loved ones, and your property is of significant importance. So on this basis, my job is to help strengthen your capacity to better defend yourself. And this, in this episode, is through, first of all, exposing you to the four main tenets of self-defense. And these are detect, deter, deny, and defend. So before I go into these tenets of self-defense, here we are at a position where we should first of all establish what self-defense is. In the context of the self-defense world, self-defense can mean many different things. If you're at a stage whereby you are in a whole environment of having to fight and to protect yourself, then to do so successfully, you more than likely will say that, yes, you have to defend yourself. But before those stages, or before that stage, you more than likely can also do other things, such as you basically equipping your mind in a way whereby you plan where you go to actually not go into dangerous circumstances. You plan how to drive, you plan where your routes are. In the context of where you live or work, you basically equip your immediate property with the necessary surveillance and the resources to improve its security capacity, to name a few. All of this is geared towards self-defense. So with that being said, I will now move into the whole context of detect. If you're going to look at the screen now, what it is that you are seeing here is a man with what appears to be a knife. And in the context of detect, if you are in an environment, say for example on the road, and you happen to see individuals with tools such as this in their hand, then that is you applying detect. And if you then make the necessary action of staying far or keeping distance from individuals such as this on the road, then that in of itself is self-defense. It is very important that you understand that at the context of detect, it is you applying the usage of your awareness signals. So yes, you can use your eyes, but I would also say that other elements of awareness or being able to successfully apply awareness include using the senses of your ears, which is to hear or to listen to what is happening around you, sense of smell, to smell what is taking place, basically who has whatever odor, whatever perfume. Basically, you can even use the sense of taste. If it's a case that you're drinking something and obviously it has a spoilage to it, you're more likely to stop drinking it. So that in of itself is you applying self-defense as well. And if you're going to think about it in the context of touch, right? You're touching, say for example, hot surfaces, or if you're walking about and you notice that a place is slippery, you will try to avoid these kind of realities or circumstances that can more than likely subject you to greater harm. All of these aspects, which is you utilizing your senses, are the key elements of you being better capable of detecting what's happening around in your environment. If it's a case that your senses are compromised by, say, for example, devices on, say, for example, the road, then in that respect, your capacity to detect is much less. And in so doing, you're then reducing your time to be able to respond and or to successfully create an efficient plan. Now, after it's a case that you have detect, then the other stage we talk about is the whole context of deter. Now, in the sense of deterrence, what it is that you are basically applying are those tools that basically can say to a potential attacker, hey, back off, or you are not an easy target. It is important to note that deterrence can include you in terms of your person. It can also include inanimate objects. So as you can see in this image here, this person has what appears to be a pepper spray. And she has her arms extended with thumb rather, on the top of the pepper spray, indicating that she's ready to use it. So in this context, she has already deployed it. And by her having it out, she more than likely, if you can look at her mouth, is also giving a warning. And this is her means of trying to create a deterrence. By doing this warning signal, by having this inanimate object out, this tool out, she is more than likely suggesting or indicating to the threat that she is not easy to be taken down. As a result, what it is that more than likely can occur is that the individual who is the actual or potential threat will not advance because he or she does not want to be faced with some form of damage. So it is critical for you to understand that having a great capacity to deter threats improves your reality of better protecting yourself. Having tools to your advantage, they do have the means of being able to say to that particular threat, hey, back off, you're not an easy target, and as such, he or she will more than likely be more inclined to back down. But it's key for you to also understand that deterrence does not necessarily mean that you have to have tools, external tools. You as a person can also become a deterrent to potential threats. So as you add that to the detect, if it's a case that as an individual you are walking on the road and your posture is tall and your head is up and you're fully aware of what's going on, then potential threats seeing you will see that you are aware and will also see that you more than likely are portraying an aura of confidence. In that respect, he or she will look at you and say you more than likely represent more of a resistance related to somebody else who is slumped down and has head in a device per se. And if it's a case that they are supposed to be beckoned to by somebody, their means of responding is not as commanding. That basically means that they have basically put out there in the environment a less deterrent energy. So I'm just emphasizing that deterrence can include two main things. You as an individual, or human beings, or living things, and inanimate objects, such as you having a pepper spray, you having a firearm, you basically having any other tool to improve your capacity to defend yourself. Now, the third level that we need to also take into consideration is deny. And in the context of deny, what it is that we're saying here is that you are basically creating a barrier between yourself and the threat, whether it be potential and or actual. In this image, what it is that we're seeing here is the young lady on the floor. She basically has her arms or hands holding on to the wrist of the attacker, which is, or who is on top of her. What it is that you more likely can be able to at least, infer is that the person who is on top, this person is trying to attack. And she basically is denying him that means of attacking her efficiently by basically creating a degree of control over his limbs. Now, the reason why I show you this is basically for you to understand that deny, whilst it can basically mean you creating a physical barrier, such as you having a grill or you having, say, for example, your car relative to the outside environment and you being inside the car, that is, it also could be person to person. You denying the individual the means of easy access. So for ladies, an image such as this would be highly relevant because in the context of what it is that can be applied or interpreted, what it is that you are seeing is that this young lady is denying this man the means of violating her. All right. And she is doing so by applying a degree of resistance, albeit, yes, she's actually in the phase as well of defense. But by her controlling his wrist, she basically is not necessarily attacking, but she basically is restricting his means of further attacking her or reducing her capacity to defend herself. So in summary in regards to the deny, it is key for you to understand that deny is your means of creating a barrier between yourself and the attacker. This barrier can be physical. So in the context of your home environment, it basically could be in the Jamaican world, that is, us having our grills and basically us having our gates. And basically in that respect, we are saying persons to the outside world that us on the inside, they are not having that open, if you will, to enter. We have created that barrier. But similar to that, if it's a case that you are in an entanglement per se, then you basically stopping that individual from further advancing in whatever his or her motivation may be is also your means of denying that individual that means of access. And as such, that is also a means of you applying self-defense. Now, the fourth stage, and in my means of passing on education to persons, defend is the fourth stage. And it really is also the last stage. And what I mean by this is that in the context of the 4 Ds, detect, deter, deny, defend, your means of actually defending yourself would come after the fact that those first 3 phases would have either been breached or you would have gone through those 3 phases, and in a means unsuccessfully, you have to then fight. It is critical for you to understand that if it's a case that you are in a circumstance where you have to fight, you have to also accept that chances are you will be severely injured or worse. So in my way of saying defend last, it's my way of also saying that if you are considering the whole means of what you should focus on as regards to the 4 Ds to better improve yourself in the context of self-defense, focus significantly on the first 3 as a new person in this world. Defend, it takes a lot more time, skill, and effort to improve your capacity. I want to also bring to your attention this image that shows you that you have an attacker with what appears to be a machete, and you also basically have an individual who is trying to defend himself, albeit without any form of external weapon. You must keep this in mind that in the context of your real world, it is not a dojo which basically has that of a controlled environment. The real world presents itself with threats who can present to you lethal weapons at any given time. And you must assume that a threat, if they are to attack you, does have a lethal weapon on his person or within close proximity to him or her. You see in this image, as you can see here, this person who is defending himself in the blue, arm is up. That arm is not efficient and effective in protecting him from the blade of this machete. All right. And this basically is why we say that in the context of self-defense, if you have to fight and you have the option to run away, do so. Because when you consider persons with blades, which is considered as a lethal weapon at close range, as I regularly say to many other persons who I will train, close range, I consider it much more dangerous than an individual with a firearm at close range, because it's very hard for you to form any form of blockage, and it's hard for you to even consider to control that weapon. So with that being said, I will reiterate the point that defense should be the final phase in the context of your 4Ds. You should make sure that you consider strengthening your capacities of detect, deter, deny, and then defend. Because keep in mind that in the context of fighting, real world fighting will more than likely present you with the reality of being damaged. So this, in essence, is my way of giving you the overall snippet overview as regards to the 4Ds of self-defense. At this time, what it is that I would like to pose to you is, if it's a case that you have any questions as it pertains to the 4Ds, as it pertains to self-defense, and even as it pertains to your environment in general, and what type of situation that you more likely would have been in, or you can consider conceiving and you would like to ask of me my viewpoint and or my way of approaching it, this is the time for you to do so. All right, so looking at some of the comments. All right, Sikami say hi. Nikasha Maraj, hello Yolanda, what's happening? Yeah, man. Shanika, hi. Yeah, I hope you ladies have been taking in the discussions thus far. But again, if it's a case that you have any questions, feel free to ask the questions, all right, within the next couple of minutes, so that I may know how best to approach. But whilst I wait on whatever questions you may have, I would just like to add that after this episode, what it is then now that we'll move into is episode 2. And in terms of our plan is basically to host a live such as this once every month. Basically trying to give you the opportunity to get accustomed to the content that we will share in a given month. In addition to that, to then be able to pose whatever other questions you may have to pose moving forward. If I can pop up and give a snippet of what episode 2 will be about. Well, episode 2 will be more so about the whole focus of deny, and in that respect, it's about then utilizing certain kind of different environments. So it is not just going to be about me at that point in time sitting down, but it's more so going to be based on whatever it is that you pose over the course of the month in terms of things you would like to see how best we can be able to create that kind of environment and to engage you and to involve you in that reality as it regards to how you can better improve your capacity to deny. I would like to mention briefly that what you must consider in the context of these live sessions is that at the very best, we are not focused on trying to showcase, let's just say, if this happens, don't do this, and just talking about techniques per se, because as you just been exposed to, self-defense is not really about the whole aspect of fighting. The world around it engulfs you being better capable of detect, deter, deny, and defend. And if we're going to consider this platform, I would be open to let you have to recognize in your mind that you, as the good person, is not only being exposed to this content. You have to keep in mind that more than likely there are persons on the other side who is also being exposed to this content. So being a conscious individual I am, I cannot be exposing on the public platforms critical elements that more than likely can be countered by those individuals. Hence why our classes, self-defense fitness classes, as well as our private platforms such as our Zoom platforms will be more so reserved for that. So if you are not yet a member of OB Fitness and you would like to learn more in that depth, then you basically can feel free to submit your questions, or you may feel free to engage with us at that level, and I will direct you to our website, which is www.joinobfitness.com. Sign up for our email community, send us a WhatsApp, and we can engage with you in that respect. All right, so looking at questions now, I've seen a question from Yolanda Kiffin. I will pronounce your name proper, with oops. All right, so you say, well, if there is a need to reach that final stage of fighting, how important is strength? Very good question. Strength is very, very important. Significantly important. And I believe you're asking this question as a female, and in the context that if as a female you have to fight a man, knowing that a man generally is stronger than you, how can you then successfully fight a man? I believe that is where it is basically going, where your question is concerned. I mean, the second part of what you asked is if, or is it that being strategic in fighting can make up for a lack of strength? So yes, that is basically where I was going. Ladies, keep this in mind, that generally men, as mentioned, stronger than women generally. In the context of the strength, you also have to take into consideration that men generally also have, a taller frame, which means that he would have a much greater reach. And reach means that in the context of throwing a punch per se, that his extension to you or grabbing you is much greater than how much you can grab him. So hand-to-hand combat with a man is going to take you a lot of time to improve on that capacity. Hence why we say that for women, the best recommendation in the short term, apart from detect if you have to fight, is to use tools. All right. Because going hand to hand, it's highly unlikely that you will have the faculties physically to really subdue the man without that additional skill set provided through, for example, martial arts training, access to self-defense classes, etc. So ladies, if you can get your tools, get them. I won't be saying too much about that in this session. There will be another class where we'll talk about tools a little bit more without going too far into those lethal ones on the public platform. All right, so I hope I answered that question, Yolanda. Is there any other questions that anyone else has to ask? As a general reminder, if it's a case that you're just joining us, this live was focused on the 4 Ds of self-defense: detect, deter, deny, defend. And as I just went through in summary, detect, utilizing your senses and you having your faculties fully focused on what is happening around you in your environment to, as best as is possible, mitigate and prevent you from having to engage in a situation that can become threatening to your life, to the life of your loved one. As an example, deter is your means of incorporating inanimate objects or improving on your capacity to display and to put out there that aura of confidence and strength, basically, that will suggest and say to the potential actual threats that you are not an easy target. And as such, he or she will consider someone else who is less imposing. Deny is your means of creating a barrier between yourself and the threats, a barrier that basically can be physical and a barrier that also can be on your person or you yourself. So, you know, physical barriers could be if you're driving, so for example, windows down, you reach at a stoplight and you see some gentlemen standing nearby, potential threat, you wind up your glass, and that by you doing so, you have created more of a physical barrier. You have denied them easy access into your vehicle, as an example. Another way physically is if, say for example, you're in a close environment with an individual and that individual becomes physical, touching on your person, ladies, and trying to gain access, then you are basically controlling him in a way that denies him that access. And this control can be verbal and it can also be physical. And then defend. This is whereby if you are unable to run away, and if it's a case that you have to fight for your life, then this is your means of doing so. All right. Okay, so another question pop up. This is from Shanika Williams. So Shanika is saying, yeah, I agree. A tool can be used to incapacitate someone and to give me means of escape. That's correct. All right. So yes, basically getting that from the comments, you have a greater understanding about the 4 Ds of self-defense and how to apply the 4 Ds in your world, in your reality. And in that respect, that then indicates to me that I have successfully, done what I needed to do through this, our first episode of Self-Defense Live. So with that being said, if there is no other questions, I want to thank you very much. Do like, do share, do subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as to our email community so that you can be kept abreast for when our next episode will take place. And yeah, man, enough thanks again for the situation of you staying, even though it's a case that we experience some technical glitches. Jamaican geologists, man, I joined late. Yeah, man, enough respect. You still made it. So enough thanks. Watch the video, share it with your social networks, subscribe. See you next time.